又是一个世界艾滋病日，今天在这里，我们给你讲述4个和艾滋相关的人和事，他们和艾滋一起行走，他们都是促进社会进步的先行者。在中国，艾滋病疫情仍然是一个严峻的挑战，而一些因素正在加重疫情，如与艾滋病相关的污名、恐惧、羞辱和歧视。让我们做出我们个人的承诺，尽我们所能，遏制艾滋病的传播。只有这样，我们才能为我们这个时代以及我们的后代营造一个没有艾滋病的和谐社会。
Yeah, my name is Bernhard Schwartländer.I'm a medical doctor, and I've been working with AIDS for more than 25 years now, first in my country, which is Germany, and I was the program manager there before I joined UNAIDS, and then had a number of positions, and finally I decided and got very excited about moving to China. Worldwide there's more than 30 million people living with HIV. The majority of those are actually living in Africa, which is the continent which is very, very, very hardly hit, very strongly hit by HIV/AIDS. And there are some cities where more than a quarter of all adults walking on the street are actually living with HIV. Those are disaster levels because all of those carry a deadly virus unless they receive the treatment, and many of those are actually extremely poor, so treatment access is not easily guaranteed. Now in China, the situation isn't quite that grave. We estimate that between 700 and 800,000 people are currently living with HIV, which may sound fairly small compared to the vast population of China. However, it is 700, 800,000 lives. It is 700, 800,000 people who live with the virus, and there's more than 50,000 new infections every year. And that is still quite dramatic because every single of these infections could have been avoided. In addition to that, of course, we estimate that in addition to the 700, 800,000 people living already with the virus, there may be up to 30 to 50 million people who are at a high risk for HIV infection. And that is where we have to work together to make sure that these people will not become people living with HIV, become infected with HIV, and that is where we have to concentrate. UNAIDS as a coordinating body of the United Nations on AIDS work has a number of primary tasks. One is to sort of help other organizations in the United Nations system to focus and strengthen their work on HIV/AIDS. So we try to leverage the capacities of our sister organizations to perform better and to work more on AIDS in China. We have a number of programs that we set up ourselves, of course, and we have a number of priorities. One of those is to strengthen advocacy efforts to decrease stigma and discrimination in China, which is still very high, but also to work specifically with civil society organizations to support civil society and government to optimize how they work together in building up effective programs in China. 1 December is always a very special day for us because it's World AIDS Day. In a sense, every day should be a World AIDS Day, but it is important to also sort of once a year come together and have a special focus. The theme for the World AIDS Day is universal access and human rights. And both is, of course, extremely important and is very closely linked. Universal access means that everybody who should have access and who needs to have access to life-saving services like treatment for HIV, or access to preventive services like condoms or similar things, should have access to those services. Human rights, of course, is extremely important as a basis of how we do business, also as a basis of that everybody has a right to health and has a right to live, which does include, for example, prevention of HIV, but it also includes life-saving medicines for those who live with HIV. Most of the transmission of HIV happens in situations or through circumstances that are outside the societal norms. It is sex, it is premarital sex, it is gay sex, it is injecting drug use, and it is very difficult for governments of any society around the globe to really deal with these issues. Those are difficult issues, so they are not accepted norms, It's very difficult for a government official, for example, who wants to be re-elected in a government, to talk about these things openly because people may oppose that. So, like in other places, also in China, it's extremely important that we include communities themselves in reaching others who might have a risk, who are vulnerable, because it will be impossible for the government to reach everybody. In China, like in many other countries, HIV is right now spreading particularly fast among gay men, among men having sex with men. It is a phenomenon that we have seen in many societies. It is in China, again, like in many other societies, a phenomenon which is recognized too late, at a very late point in time, and that is a major concern. In China, it is not illegal to have sex between men, but it's not very well accepted in the society. It's actually a phenomenon that most Chinese men who have sex with men are actually married, because there's enormous pressure of the society that a man, a woman has to become married, has to be married and have to build a family and live a life. So the societal pressure is still enormous. The stigma and discrimination against men having sex with men in China because of their behavior is still enormous. It is changing more rapidly in some of the bigger cities, where we see a very vivid sort of gay community coming up and a gay lifestyle in many places, which very unfortunately also has gone along with increases in HIV transmission. In many ways, the gay lifestyle has developed faster than the prevention campaigns. So very often gay men didn't know about HIV, and by the time they knew, it was too late. But that makes it so important that we address both, really reaching out to gay men in their communities, but also addressing stigma and discrimination, which makes that easier to create an environment to talk about sexuality, to talk about HIV more freely, to protect people. Because only if they have the knowledge, they will look out for the means to protect themselves and their partners, and that is, of course, of critical importance. In all societies, it's very important that leaders in societies, or idols in society, speak up about HIV/AIDS. And we have seen this in many countries, in Africa, in my country, in Germany, in Europe, in the US, that when idols, or those who actually are recognized by society as well-known leaders in sports, in politics, and whatever, once they speak out about HIV/AIDS issues, once they speak against discrimination, that always induces a major change how the society at large actually deals with an issue.